Okay, this is the Congruent Triangles Review, Part 2, number 13. We're trying to decide if triangles are congruent, and if they are, prove it. So we have an angle congruent to an angle, another angle congruent to another angle, and a third pair of angles. So we're going to go ahead and conclude that these are not congruent. Even though you did find 3 pairs of congruent parts, AAA is not a theorem. Number 14. We have an angle congruent to an angle, side congruent to a side, and we can easily assume that these vertical angles right here are congruent. So we have angle, angle, side. So let's start with our given information. Angle H is congruent to angle K, and side HG is congruent to KJ, and those are given. Next, what can easily be assumed is that angle HIG is congruent to angle KIJ. And that is because vertical angles are congruent. Alright, I have my 3 pairs of congruent parts. I'm ready to say the triangles are congruent. So triangle HIG is congruent to triangle KIJ, and this of course is by angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side. Number 15. These 2 triangles are congruent by side, side, side. There are 3 pairs of sides marked congruent. So I can say NM is congruent to OP. ML is congruent to PQ, and NL is congruent to OQ, and that's all given. Those are all marked congruent, and that's our 3 pairs, so I don't have to go any further. Just go ahead and name the 2 triangles that are congruent. Triangle NML is congruent to triangle OPQ. And the reason is side, side, side. By the way, the links to these YouTube videos that you're watching are on Schoology. So if I go too fast, or you just need to hear something again, you need something repeated, feel free to use your device today to go ahead and watch the videos from Schoology. The links are there and you can go straight to these videos. Number 16, these are going to be congruent by hypotenuse leg. You have a pair of congruent legs right here and shared hypotenuse. So these are going to be congruent by hypotenuse leg. So the first information is that angle S is congruent to angle U. That's given to us. Also given to us is that RS is congruent to RU. So I'll just write given. Then we can easily assume RT is congruent to itself as the third pair. That's the reflexive property. And now that I have 3 pairs, I can go ahead and say what 2 triangles are congruent. So triangle RST is congruent to triangle RUT, and that's by hypotenuse leg. 17. These 2 triangles are going to be congruent by angle, side, angle. So given to us, we have congruent angles. Start with this one, WXV, congruent to this one, which is YVX. And then this angle, angle WVX, is congruent to YXV. And that was what was given to us. What can be easily assumed is that Vx is congruent to XV itself. So that's the reflexive property. And finally, now that I have my 3 pairs, I can say triangle VWX is congruent to V matches with X. Oops, excuse me. W matches with Y, and X matches with V. And that's by angle, side, angle. Number 18. These two triangles are going to be congruent by side, angle, side. So start with the given information. HE is congruent to PE, and OE is congruent to YE. That's all given to us. We can assume that angle HEY is congruent to angle OEP because vertical angles are congruent. So now that I have three pairs of congruent parts in the order side, angle, side, I can go ahead and say the two triangles are congruent. So triangle HEY is congruent to triangle OEP by side, angle, side. 19. Okay, hopefully you were aware of the error in number 19. The given was MN, so we needed to change that to MN. And then the order of the other triangle was in the wrong order. It should have been MLN. Hopefully you noticed that. All right, so let's start out with the given information. We start out knowing that JN is congruent to MN, so that's a congruent pair of sides. And then next we know that JM bisects KL. So side KL is what has been bisected. That means these two pieces are congruent. So statement number 2 is going to be that KN is congruent to LN, and that is by the definition of a bisector. I'll write the reasons in a moment. So far I have two pairs of parts. I can easily assume that these angles in between are congruent because of vertical angles. So I'd say angle JNK is congruent to triangle MNL. And now I'm ready to go ahead and say the triangles are congruent because I have three pairs of congruent parts in the order side, angle, side. So triangle JKN is congruent to triangle MLN. Right, let's add the reasons. First reason is given. The second one we did because of the bisector, so that was the definition of a bisector. The third reason was by vertical angles, so vertical angles are congruent. And the last one is by side, angle, side. Okay, next problem, number 20. So we start out knowing that AB is congruent to DC. So AB congruent to DC, there's a pair of congruent sides. Then we know that BA is perpendicular to AC. So that means at A here you're going to have a right angle. And finally we know that CD is perpendicular to DB. So at D we're going to have a right angle. So I'll go ahead and list those angles. Angle CAB is congruent to angle BDC. And that's because all right angles are congruent. Again, I'll do my reasons in a second. All right, we have two pairs of congruent parts. We need a third pair, and that shows up right here as a shared side. So side BC is congruent to side CB. And that's it. We're ready to go ahead and say that the triangles are congruent because we have three pairs of congruent parts. So triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DCB. And that's by hypotenuse leg. So this is given. This is because all right angles are congruent. Then we have the reflexive property. And this is hypotenuse leg. All right, next proof. 21. All right, so we have angle D is congruent to angle R. That's given to us. And we can add that into the picture, pair of angles. We also know that OR is parallel to DM. So there's OR and there's DM. And if we use that as the transversal, we should be able to find some congruent angles. So we'll do that step next. We can find this pair of congruent angles. So angle ROM is congruent to angle DMO. And that's because those are alternate interior. So alternate interior angles are congruent. All right, we also have a shared side, OM. So OM is congruent to itself, or MO. That's by the reflexive property. And now that I have 3 pairs of congruent parts, I'm ready for my last step, which is to say that triangle DOM is congruent to triangle RMO. And that is by angle, side. Angle, side. Angle, side. Okay. So that's the end of your review, and your you can print out another copy of this review from Schoology and complete it to turn in for bonus on your test on Monday. So I hope you take advantage of that, and I hope you practice for your test on Monday.